Welcome to Passion Powered Patter, a Mischief mini-series that meets with industry experts to explore how brands can connect with passions to form closer relationships with their consumer. Now, you don't need me to tell you that next year is a huge year for sport. With an endless list of big fixtures, today we'll explore how brands can successfully partner with sportspeople, forging to drive considerations and cut through with their audience. Today, we're joined by a sports person. We're joined by England rugby player Anthony Watson, a British lion in the pack and a lion in the chair, to chat through his views on the topic. Anthony, before we get started properly, tell us a little bit about yourself, your career. How'd you get started? How'd you go through?
Jesus, where do I start with that one? I mean, my old man played rugby, so it was kind of a bit of a, I want to say, natural pathway to end up playing, but it was far from it. I started off, I really enjoyed it, and then I briefly dabbled with football for a little bit, and I thought that that was going to be the route that I went down. In the end, it was kind of a combination of rugby feeling more natural to me and the fact that my older brother was doing really well at rugby, and the competitive nature within me, I guess, wanted to one up my brother and kind of try and outdo him. So that's why I ended up taking rugby a bit more seriously, and then just kind of fell in love with it from there, and that was it, I guess.
As I say, at a young age, are you aware of like the commercial side of it coming through, or that have no matter? Because obviously, you don't need me to tell you, footballers get huge money if they go to the top and they go all the way. Obviously, a lot of rugby players make that choice at some point between like picking between other sports, and the commercial success of football must come into it a little bit. But at a young age, does that ever come into your mind, or you're just thinking, this is the sport I'm best at, this is where my future lies?
No, it didn't really come into my mind, to be honest with you. I think in hindsight, from a purely financial perspective, I made a pretty stupid decision. But it doesn't really come into your mind now. I got into it because I loved what I did, and I think that that's what the biggest consideration that most people have is the ultimate success that they can get from the sport, you know.
So look, when you're coming through the ranks and you're progressing nicely in your club team, and it's like England are starting to notice, when was the first time you sort of noticed that brands started sniffing around, either as part of club responsibility or as part of the country?
I mean, I was pretty young when Adidas got involved with me, to be honest with you, and that was the big one that I was like, oh my God, like I've not cracked it, but I was like, wow, this is serious now. Yeah. And I remember when I got my first pair of boots through from Adidas for free, it was like Christmas 5 years over, you know. It was just unbelievable. It was like everything I had dreamed of as a kid. I can actually remember, this is a pretty embarrassing story to tell, but I remember,
please.
I remember when I was probably about 12 or 13, I remember lying to all of my friends that I was sponsored by Adidas when I absolutely wasn't. And then, 5-6 years later, I ended up actually being sponsored by Adidas. It was pretty cool. But that was the first one where I was like, this is pretty awesome.
Nice. And like, look, I've obviously done a bit of research. I understand you're a bit of a sneakerhead anyway. So did that, obviously Adidas coming along, that's something that you're clearly passionate about already. That must make a big difference, right?
Yeah, it does, for sure. I think, mate, the initial attraction and love for it was purely just on the boots. I think with sportswear, it's a little bit different to other stuff. I think that the product itself has to be right and has to be right for you. So, there's no point me being sponsored by another brand if the footwear is going to affect my performance.
Yeah.
I think that's where partnering with brands and sport is a little bit different to other industries, is that there's a functionality element to it. So, like, again, it would be pointless for me to be sponsored by someone else and have boots that were mad uncomfortable and my performance suffered as a result. Whereas I've always got on pretty well with Adidas boots, and if I haven't, they've made adjustments for me.
Tell me about that. What sort of adjustment? I mean, because I'm coming at it from, I'm a football fan first and foremost. Harry Kane's slotting goal in Skechers now, which is boggling to me. Like, so tell me, like, as an athlete, like, what did you ask for? Was it like? It
wasn't necessarily what I asked for, to be honest with you. I mean, I did have some pretty strong opinions on colourways and stuff like that, but it was more, I had quite a few injuries, and I've had quite a few injuries throughout my career, and one being rupturing my Achilles twice was quite detrimental to like how I function and the left side of my body and stuff like that. So one of my coaches ended up speaking to a lady called Diana Schneider at Adidas, who's like, I don't know her exact role, but she basically customizes footwear for people who have got injuries or deficiencies or anything like that. And anyway, they came up with a resolution of putting a heel lift in one side of my shoe, which was like, I think it was 220 mil higher than the other side.
That's unreal.
And then they softened the leather to make it easier on my feet. They changed quite a bit, to be fair, and it made a big difference.
Man, that's it. And you noticed the performance straight away, or do you notice the comfort level, or just not getting injured as often? Or?
No, it wasn't direct like, oh, I stopped getting injured. It was just like, this is much more comfortable on my foot, and whether it does or doesn't directly stop me getting injured, it helps me. Yeah. So, there's no real argument against it.
I was going to say, one of the things, I think that segues really nicely into a question we wanted to ask you about, like, look, it always feels sometimes when I've done work in this space that you give brand work to an agent says, yeah, it'll be bang up for that, and then the athlete turns up and it's just like, I've not heard anything, and I'm like, I can't stand this. Where it sounds to me like you've had a really good experience there with having a two-way conversation with a brand, taking into account your performance and your views and what you want from it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's extremely important when you're working with a brand, is for them to understand you as a person and not pigeonhole that this is what we want, can you do it or not. It's like, well, is there a bit of flex within this? Like, this is what I'm comfortable doing, this is what I'm not comfortable doing. I think what's also important is your agency or management. I'm lucky that I've worked with the same agent since I was 17, so a lot of stuff he knows that I wouldn't be comfortable with gets filtered out before it even gets to me.
I've worked with rugby players quite a few times. One of the benefits you have is tends to be like you get it a bit more and it's a bit more well spoken, and you sort of have this coming through the brands, but it's also like some of the maturity of the brands that come through where you're dealing with like Land Rovers and O2. They're like big companies. That do you sort of feel like you enjoy the prestige of a big brand, or does it really matter to you as long as it's right?
I think originally, I mean, it helps. Don't get me wrong, it does help. But I think originally it played a bigger factor than it does now. I think I would much rather partner with a brand that was closer to what I want to do, a bit more innovative, a bit more like on the come up type thing than a brand that's already established. This is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it, and that's that. But that's just me personally. I think everyone else has got their own views, values, and stuff like that would align them better to a certain brand. But I think that comes back to my point around pigeonholing people, or just expecting that, okay, let's go get a rugby player. Who should we get? Google best rugby player. Let's get him.
Look, so you're 29 now, is that right? Yeah. So not a
watch your words very carefully.
I'm very careful here. I'm just saying, like, I feel like used to be built like a front row. Not anymore. It's look, you're not at the start of your career anymore, and that has changed. Does that change the way you view brands, and maybe you're thinking about after the game and what you'd like to do afterwards? And does that influence your thoughts at all?
I mean, from a purely personal opinion right now, I don't, it's about maximizing the people that I'm currently working with, to be honest with you. I've got a lot of good relationships with brands that I've been with for a long time, and that's where I see most of the value working both ways, from here to when I retire. That doesn't mean to say that there isn't opportunities, but I think as of the last 5-6 years, I think, phrase that a bit wrong, but I need to be more selective with who I work with and why, and for the reasons I said earlier. I think it's important for authenticity, and it's no longer just about, oh, they're going to pay me this much, let me go and do that because it's cool. I mean, there's a lot of people that will do that type of stuff, but I just think that it's a little bit shallow is probably the best way of doing it, of saying it, sorry.
I was going to say, well, we, look, as an agency, we speak about authenticity all the time, and you can also, the thing is, you can also smell it a mile off when someone has just done it's the big smile, was it the brand in hand and a big smile, and you can sense when someone really likes it. So talk to me more about your passions outside of rugby. Like, are you big family man? Are you like into sport non-stop? Like, what gets you up in the morning?
I don't know. It's a weird. I've been so obsessed with rugby for so long, and I still am, about maximising my career. I have got hobbies outside of it. I love golf at the moment, which is probably not
any golf brands out there.
I wish. And I play a lot of PlayStation as well. But I enjoy the business side of things as well, and just trying to learn about that type of industry and how that works. So that's, I'm trying to better myself in a a lot of different areas to have flexibility when I'm done with rugby.
I've not tried any of the rugby games though; they're all rubbish.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, they're not great. I think there's a studios that's just got involved in rugby that are making a new one that should be, fingers crossed, better. They made the cricket game, which was decent. So if they can translate that over, it should be right.
I'm going to have to ask you the question.
Go ahead.
Have you played as yourself in a rugby game?
I actually haven't, but you
come
should.
on.
No, I haven't. But do you know why? Out of principle, I don't know who made the game last, but if I showed you a picture of what they made me look like, it is the biggest shambles you've ever seen. I swear to God, it's horrendous.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was like you've done a Lions tour, and that is one of those things that brands love, and it's got almost like it feels like it's almost got a completely different market with it because it's the travel and it happens infrequently and it's a really sort of special time. Can you tell us what it's a bit like as a player, and did you notice any of the brands being a bit different around that because there's so much heritage and history coming through?
I didn't notice that, to be honest with you, directly in terms of like a difference between England stuff and Lions stuff or anything like that. I would say that from like a domestic competition, the way that the sponsors are handled compared to England and Lions is pretty different.
Night and day.
In terms of the professional nature of the setups, how they look after the players in terms of like, right, you've been on feet for too long now, you've got training tomorrow, let's get you off feet, that type of stuff, and that's important. So that's the biggest jump I would see. I would say that there's probably a fair bit more of community commercial stuff that we do with the Lions, or when I've been part of the Lions, and I don't know whether that's again because of the infrequent nature of it.
But I suppose it's also a little bit of like you're playing with lads that you'd normally be smashing in, right? And I think that's quite nice to see. Like I can imagine the community stuff come through because like you're playing against you're normally playing against the Welsh, the Irish, and the Scottish, and now you're here.
Yeah, I still think that brands could do a better job of working with that special group of the Lions. Like it is incredible, and some of the stuff that happens on the tours and after the tours and the friendships that are made, I don't think they're really harnessed from a brand perspective as well as they should be, and that's just my opinion. But I just think that they could use authentic special moments like that better than they currently do.
Yeah, so Anthony, I'm going to wrap us up there, mate. Thank you so much for your time.
No
key takeouts. He's up for a golf brand tie-up. It's like somebody get his likeness right in the rugby game, and we'll be laughing. But no, thank you so much for your time, mate.
No
I really
dramas.
enjoyed that.
All good.
Thank you. So that concludes this episode of Passion Powered Patter. Let us know what you thought. Do you agree or disagree with the points raised? Was there anything left unsaid? We'd love to know your feedback. So, however you're listening or viewing, give us a shout in the comments below. Now, don't forget to visit the Mischief website to see other episodes of Passion Powered Patter in action, where we talk with further industry experts on how brands can connect with consumers. For example, our MD, Charlotte Brooks, spoke with floating editor of Joe.co.uk, Jack Peat, who gave us the media perspective. And our strategy lead, Dan Deeks Osborne, spoke with Vix Gold, the head of marketing at Just Eat, to let you know how brands can come in. Finally, what about you? If you want to get in touch to speak about your brand and how we can connect you with passion, get in touch at hello@mischiefpr.com.